Excellent. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar here, Officiating Together. This has been a very interesting year so far. The season came to a screeching halt. I just want to start off by just saying I hope that you, family members and everybody are safe, healthy, and doing well during this trying time. So as we've come into the COVID and starting to think about next year, what can we do? How do we make ourselves better? Because we don't know where things are going to go with regards to seminars. So what do? We all need to play a better role in helping develop our officiating. So tonight's seminar is going to talk about, webinar, excuse me, is going to talk about what these people, these officials, we got Katie Guay, Brian Murphy, Ryan Daisy, Chris Rooney, and Scott Zelkin. Greatly appreciate your time in joining us tonight. Years and years of wisdom and experience. They're going to talk about how they've come up through the grassroots all the way to the NHL, what it's been meant to be mentored and be a mentee at different times, the experiences that they've had through their career. And, you know, we're looking for people to find out what it really is to be a mentor. A mentor is just not being someone that works a game with somebody, but really you have a bond and a friendship with that person. Someone for able to lean on your shoulder, ask questions, and get experience and advice for. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully you'll get some words of wisdom that you'll want to be a mentor. If you want to be a mentee from the grassroots up, we want to know that. We want to put you in touch with the right people to help you in your career as an official, be it that you just want to work bantams, squirts, who knows what it is. If you're an experienced official and you want to continue to work high school, juniors, college, we'll do that. Even though this is USA Hockey, we want to make sure that you can go to the highest level you can. So we'll connect with our NIHOA groups here in Mass, with our college assigners. So there's many different levels of experience that we'll be able to hook you up with. To give you a quick update and just a reminder, our officiating season actually opens up next week, May 26th. Opening for registration for officiating will begin. So I highly suggest this is the time to register, get in, do your open book tests, get your modules done. That way we have that done and behind us where everyone's sitting home, has some free time. Where are we going to be going with officiating? What will it be like in Massachusetts? So right now we are not completely sure. We're either going to fall into stage 2, stage 3 area. We're hoping that we fit into category 2. Mass Hockey's been on committees with the governor and their panel. I could tell you this is that there'll probably be no physical games with officials till at least August. They'll probably start playing and practicing maybe in July, and then games based off of what we see trending. What does that mean? How many players on the ice? You'll probably see times of games being longer, meaning an hour game is an hour game, but that 10 minutes in between the game is probably going to at least a half hour as they get the players out of the rink, sanitize, clean the rooms. So there's going to be a lot of restrictions. You'll probably see players coming in to the rink dressed. Same thing with us as officials. We may be having to come in dressed and just putting your skates on. Lots of different questions with regards to masks, not wearing masks, wearing gloves as an official, who blows the whistle. So we're also concerned about your safety, not just about the safety as the players, but also the safety as the officials. So there's a lot going on. Stay tuned to our Twitter account, our massofficials.com. We will continue to update you. Seminars. What's going to happen with seminars? Good question. Our USA Annual Congress is going to be virtual the first and second week in June. We will be talking about that as RICs on the best direction It may not be the same everywhere in the country because we're going to need to adapt by different guidelines, rules, and regulations with regards to some type of virtual seminar, live seminar, combination. So please stay tuned for that. So we are planning that and trying to figure out what is the best and easiest way and safest way to continue to educate and get everybody re-registered, new officials on board and certified. So there's a lot of balls in the air. We're juggling it. We do have your best interest at heart, and that is, I want to make sure that you are aware of that, and we'll keep you updated. So I don't want to take up too much time with that. Feel free at any time, kdonovan@masshockey.org, to email me if you have questions with that. I'll continue to update you. So again, on our panel tonight, we have Scotty Zelkin. Scotty is the director of the Officiating Development Program for USAH Hockey. Katie Guay, Mass official, grassroots, NCAA, college, high school, IIHF, Olympics, whole cascade, huge resume. We are privileged also to have with us tonight Brian Murphy, 33 years in the NHL, came up through the grassroots, not a Massachusetts native, but a New England native, Dover, New Hampshire, has spent a lot of time and continues to give back today with USA, running multiple camps. And then two more Massachusetts people. I'll go to Chris Rooney first. Chris, born and raised in Mass, came up through the program in Massachusetts, learning how to be an official, mentored all those ways through, and has made it to the top of the level of the NHL. And of course, Ryan Daisy, another Massachusetts prodigy coming through the ODP program. So you'll hear some things with him, with Scotty, and has made his way up through the system. And he's been giving back. Ryan and both Katie have been more than gracious to come and help us out at some seminars, special programs that we've run. So they're going to talk about their careers and what it's been to be mentored and be a mentee and what we can get out of it. So I'll turn it over to Scott, and he'll start with his experience with the ODP and what that is all about.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate having the opportunity to be here tonight. Looks like we've got a large group of officials that have tuned in, and I think that's fantastic. It tells me that there's an interest here just before Memorial Day, and people miss hockey, and I think we all miss it, and we're all looking forward to getting back into the rinks in some way, shape, or form. As Kevin said, I work for USA Hockey staff. I am the manager of the Officiating Development Program. Very quickly, what that is, and I'm going to give you kind of the 2-minute version. We are the elite development arm of the Officiating Education Program. We take officials throughout the country, and we give them an opportunity to referee or line officiate the top junior hockey in the country. The United States Hockey League, which is the Tier 1 junior hockey, on par with the Canadian Hockey League, the Western League, Quebec League, and Ontario League, as well as Tier 2 hockey, the North American League, which has a few teams now in New England, and then certainly we have some Tier 3 hockey as well. Officials in our program, we certainly use what we might consider some part-time local officials to help out, but we have a good segment of officials that work for us on a full-time basis. They might live in apartments with other officials. They might work out upwards of 100, 120 games a year where they're being supervised or coached on a regular basis, whether it's through officiating coaches in the stands. We have almost 10,000 man game worked in the NHL when you count up the experience that our officiating coaches have. We do video sessions. We do a lot of that stuff. And honestly, one of the secret sauces we have, and we develop officials and move them on to higher levels with the purpose of them being very successful at those higher levels. Officials work in international hockey, the World Juniors, gold medal game. Jeremy Tufts, a New Hampshire official, came from our program, worked the gold medal game at the World Championships a year ago. But really one of the secret sauces of what we do is mentorship. And when I looked online, because you can find everything online these days, I just punched in the word mentor and mentee. Mentor is an experienced or trusted advisor. A mentee is a person who is advised or trained. And that doesn't come from Scott Zelkin or a Rob Martell who refereed 1,000 games in the National Hockey League or things like that. It comes from within our group. What's it mean to be a mentor? At its core, being a mentor is being a trusted advisor. It involves making yourself available to support and advise someone when they need it. Delivering that support in a way that makes sense. What's it mean to be a mentee? It's someone who has identified a specific person or professional to help them achieve a goal and being held accountable by that mentor. And Ryan will be able to speak to this in a second because he is a graduate of our program. We put officials in situations where they're going to get mentors. They're going to find mentors within their own group. We'll take young officials, pair them with older officials or more experienced officials that are going to show them the ropes. They're going to show them, look, how do you do things? How do you handle situations? They don't just show up to a game, shake hands. I guess I'm not so sure we're going to be shaking hands again, but walk into the rink, sit down, go work the game, and go their own separate ways. They're talking about things beforehand. They're talking to their peers about how could I do better? I just got off the ice tonight, and man, the game didn't go that well. I had a tough face-off. I had some tough calls on the lines, had some tough penalties. How do you think I should have handled that? Look at this tape. And they're mentoring each other. They're coaching each other. They're helping each other advance. And, we'll talk about this a little later, but every single one of us, in terms of the panel, whether it's Brian Murphy, who's worked, 30 some odd years, 2,000 plus games, Chris Rooney, Katie, none of us were successful without mentors along the way. We all have somebody that helped us achieve the success. And at the same token, we all help somebody else achieve some success. And that doesn't just go for officials that work at the National Hockey League or the Olympic level. The guy that works the state championship game in Massachusetts or the state high school championship game in Illinois, that official, male or female, had somebody that helped them along the way. And I guarantee you that official that worked that high school state championship game, that official helped somebody else that maybe was fortunate enough to work the sport state championship game. And so you don't ever wear just one hat. And within our program, within our development program, when we're taking officials where we're forcing them to eat, sleep, and breathe hockey, they're being mentored by some of their fellow officials, by somebody that's been a little more successful and a little more experience within the program, but they're also mentoring some of our newer officials along the way. And when they're living in some exciting places like Des Moines, Iowa, or Omaha, Nebraska, they're also working local games, and they're mentoring officials in those areas too. And that's, it's one of the most important things and one of the best things we can do as a program. So I don't want to take up too much time, but from a national standpoint, that's what we're doing within our program, and really is one of the things that I believe helps us create success and put our officials in the best possible position so they can be successful throughout the year and then when they move on to higher leagues from our program.
Thanks, Scotty. Ryan, do you have anything you want to share there, since you have been out of the program for not just a fairly short time, and what that program experience was for you?
Yeah, first off, Kevin, I'd like to thank you for putting on this webinar tonight. Fantastic idea. And to all the officials out there that are on this webinar, thank you for taking the time and joining. I think it's a great opportunity to to listen and learn from a lot of officials who have been in your shoes and want to continue to grow. So quickly, a little bit about myself. Born and raised in Mansfield, Massachusetts. Grew up wanting to play in the NHL. Quickly learned that wasn't going to happen. Ken Tucker was my middle school hockey coach, and he was involved in, in officiating in Massachusetts. So he kind of brought me on. So officiated a little bit in high school. And then from there I went to college, took a couple of years off. And then I got this email from USAH Hockey, and it was entitled the Officiating Development Program. So I talked to a couple buddies who were involved in officiating and wanted to learn more about this, this program and what it was all about. So I actually went to it was a weekend seminar down in Cromwell, Connecticut. And Brian Murphy and Chris Rooney, they were both there as instructors. And I learned more about what, the USA Hockey Development Program was all about. So junior and senior year of college, I worked tier 3 junior hockey within the program, but up and down the Northeast. And then I would travel every once in a while out to the Midwest to go work tier 2 in the North American Hockey League. So once I was done with college, I had an opportunity to move out to the Midwest and work for the USHL full time. So I moved out there, lived in Omaha, Nebraska my first year, Des Moines, Iowa my second year. And like Scott Zelkin said, when you're out there, you don't know what kind of role you're going to play. So, when I first came into the USHL and to the program, I kind of wanted to seek out a mentor immediately. And this goes for every single, age group or level that you're going to work is, who's been successful in that league. So you kind of want to, do your homework, find out who's been successful. And then you really want to learn, why that person's been successful. You can want to try to create a relationship with them and almost study their habits on the ice and off the ice. For me, when I first came into the program and worked at the USHL, Brian Oliver was the linesman. He was, an absolute stud and worked multiple, finals. So my supervisor at the time paired me up with him for quite a few games, which made complete sense. It was my first year out there in the program. I was striving for excellence. He'd reached that, the excellence there. So I partnered with him and skated quite a few games with him. And I would just kind of pick his brain about certain situations. You travel the games together. So you can pick your brain about certain situations in that game that you had or games before. It's just a, great opportunity to learn. And then you start developing, and then you have, without knowing, you start becoming successful yourself in whatever league it is. And then without realizing, you honestly, at the end of the day, you start to become a mentor yourself. You don't really know, you don't sign up for it. No one tells you, hey, you're going to be a mentor. But Jeremy Tufts, who lives in New Hampshire, he came out to the USHL, and it was my second year, and he came out for the weekend, and they paired Jeremy and I up together. And, I was like, all right, well, this is going to be my teammate. So I guess I got to do, a little bit of mentoring there. And, Jeremy turned out to be, an incredible official, and who's really, involved with USA Hockey today. So it's been great. And I also looked up, my thoughts, kind of Scott touched on a little bit, is the role of a mentor. And, with my thoughts is, you're there to support the growth and development of the mentee. Your role is to be more of a friend and advisor, someone that the mentee can call and talk to. You're not so much a supervisor or coach. In every single league that you're going to work, you have your supervisors, you have your bosses. If you're going to be a mentor, the last thing your mentee wants to do is, to be picked apart. And then I think, it's really important if you're going to be a mentor is, to be there to help the mentee, set short-term and long-term goals, of their own, while providing wisdom and support, and not guiding them through every step of the way, but, show them the roadmap without all the details. And then, being a younger official in the NHL, I mean, I latched on to multiple officials. I study, even though, I'm a linesman and Chris is a referee, I study Chris and how he watches the game. Brian Murphy, Brian Pansich, they've been my mentors for years. I think Brian Murphy knows that he's been my mentor for years. And as a mentee, it's really important, the number one skill you need to have in going into this is you got to be a good listener. And, if you're a good listener, you need to be coachable, and you need, if you're going to be coachable, you have to understand that you're opening yourself up to both positive and negative feedback. But if that's what you're signing up for, you really have to understand that, not everything is going to be positive, and nor should it, because how are you going to grow in the game if, everybody would be where they want to be in their officiating career if you were the best. And, and it takes time to get there. And I think it's really important to have a mentor to help you get there along the way. And then, whatever the feedback is, from your mentor, use it, try to implement it into your game. And if it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't feel good, if it just doesn't seem right, then it's completely okay. You don't have to do everything that your mentor says. A quick story, it was my first year in the NHL. It was my minor league year. It was probably my 10th or 12th game in the NHL. And as a Wednesday night rivalry game, the only game on in the NHL, NBC Sports, it was Minnesota against Chicago. And, there was a call on my line and it went to the Chicago scored. Minnesota wanted to challenge it. And then, so, I was a little bit nervous about that. So all of a sudden, the headset wasn't working to the War Room in Toronto. And then the landline wasn't working to the War Room in Toronto. And then the penalty box attendant hands me his iPhone. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? He was like, it's the War Room in Toronto. So there it is. It's like an 8-minute review. I'm on an iPhone with 20,000 fans screaming at me. It's my 10th or 12th game in the National Hockey League, and I almost felt like I blacked out. Like I really don't remember it much, but I do remember the next morning I was in the airport and I had to work a game in Winnipeg that night. As I got a call from Brian Murphy, and he knew immediately. So I picked up the phone. I was like, "Hey, Murph, what's going on?" He's like, "Kid, how you doing?" Because he knew that I needed to talk to somebody, So Murph gave me, he was a great coach, great mentor. Nobody's perfect, but I think it's really, really important as a younger official to find a mentor, study their habits on and off the ice, and then you'll understand why that mentor has been successful at whatever level that they work at.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And that sort of leads right into Murph. And Murph, your experience from the grassroots, and if people haven't even seen, he's been on Chronicle in New Hampshire, and a little bit of his life story and his great little official, but how he got into it and his experience as being a mentee, but just a mentor also, and how you still continue to preach that today, in even talking about and teaching the merit camp within USA Hockey and trying to get those guys to really give back and become mentors too. Just how your experience as being just the mentee as you started, and really you've been a great mentor, and really how that never ends in your career.
Well, first, Kevin, thanks for organizing this, and thanks for having somebody from New Hampshire on the call. I appreciate that. And for everybody tuning in, we appreciate your interest in officiating. I think it's awesome that the Massachusetts district is doing this. Really, partially just to finish Ryan's story, I think one of the key things about being a mentor is to be a listener. And that's a huge part of it. But, research really shows that, having a mentor really, the mentee performs better and his career is going to advance quicker. And I think that's a key component. And, I've had a life mentor. My high school hockey coach, Dan Raposa, grew up in Attleboro, Massachusetts. He's been my life mentor, and he got me into officiating. He was a referee in Hockey East, and I was going to school at the University of New Hampshire, and he kind of motivated me to get into officiating. And the funny story about, I've had a 32-year career in the NHL, but the first USA seminar, I almost didn't go. I worked that morning driving to Zamboni at the local rink, and I went home and sat on the couch, and the meeting was a lot shorter back then. We started at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just remember sitting there, and I was sitting on the couch, and I almost didn't get up. And some days I think about that and went, man, what a lucky decision that was. And really all along the way, I've kind of sought out a mentor. I always, and it's not necessarily the best official, but it's the person that does things the right way. And, I've always been someone that's tried to learn from other people. I think you can learn so much from watching people, talking to people, and listening to people. And I think all of that is like really a key thing. And, I remember coming along, and I worked the American Hockey League, and Jimmy Tortorella, he's the assistant coach at Harvard now. He was working as an official back then. He was linesman in the American League, and he still reminds me every day. He goes, "Murph, I taught you everything you know." But in a lot of ways they did. I learned so much from those guys, and just watching them, what they were doing. And these guys are just, they worked in the American Hockey League their whole life, which is the second best league in the world, but they weren't full-time officials. And yet, they were great officials. And that's, I think, an important part is, just because there's, Ryan and Chris and they're working in the NHL, there's so many great officials in the New England area that work in college hockey, work in the American League. So it's not just about the real top guys. And, I got to the NHL, and I think I was kind of fortunate. I think that when I started, there was a lot more assignments geared towards mentoring, and you got paired up, and you got paired up with someone who was going to teach you something. And I can tell you the assignments were made out in that order. And I thought that was important. And I didn't really copy one person. It's not about following one person. It's more about, I took a little bit of something from everybody and kind of put it into my toolbox. I didn't try to copy any one person, and really sought out advice from different people. And then obviously as my career moved on, then I switched from being the mentee to the mentor. And I really felt when there was a point in my career where, I really felt like I had to do everything better than other people. I had to do it right, because kids like Ryan Daisy were coming into the league and they were looking up to me, and I wanted to do things right. I was in the gym in the morning working out, which I always did, but I made more of a point to it. And I just, all the little things that I think make you a better official, the rule knowledge, things like that. I tried to do that, and I tried to impart that on them, not so much by telling them how to do it, but I wanted them just to see me doing it. And I think you don't really necessarily have to learn from somebody telling you something. You can just see how they're doing. And, it's interesting. Sometimes the role flips. And, I'd been in, this is back in like around the 2011-12 era. I went a period of about 9 years without working the Stanley Cup Finals, and it was bothering me. And I think for me, it wasn't the physical aspect of the game; it was the mental aspect. And I remember working. I was lucky enough to work with Bruins in a playoff series, and I watched how he acted. I watched what he was doing away from the game, during the game. Just the whole thing, just his whole attitude, his whole mindset. And he didn't know this, but I realized that I had to change my mindset. I never told him that until a few years later, when he called me and I told him the whole story. But the truth is, I probably owe 4 Stanley Cup Finals to Chris Rooney, because I watched what he was doing. And I think you have to have the mindset every day of, I got to get better no matter who you are. And I think the biggest issue right now in officiating, and certainly at the youth level, is retention. And I remember I was fortunate enough to be out at the national meeting last year and was talking to a bunch of the RICs. And, so I'm talking with the gentleman that runs the Alaska district. And I asked him about retention. And he looks at me and he goes, "Murph, we got no problem with retention." He goes, "Every one of my guys is paired up and has a mentor and a mentee. And everybody, they do the test, they register, and they're all involved." And I thought that was so awesome. But again, they've only got 500 officials in the whole state. And giving you Massachusetts, I asked Kevin before we started, it's 2,000. So it's a little more challenging for bigger districts. But this type of mentoring can really help with retaining officials. And, you can look at it and say, why am I going to give back? Well, you have to look at it as you got so much from the game. I go teach at USAH summer camps, and I see people from the NHL there, and they go to me, "Murph, why are you here?" And I go, "Because I've gotten so much from USA Hockey and from the game that I just want to make sure these kids get the best opportunity they can." And it's a huge part of that. So I think there's so many moving parts and so many components to it. I think it's, the important part is try not to put your personal spin on it, because it's not about your opinion. It's what's best for the game. So you have to realize when you're the mentor, you can't just put your personal spin on it, or you have to qualify it, because it may not be the best information for them to get. And, I think the whole process allows everyone to get better, and hopefully we can retain more officials and get more people involved in the game.
That's great. Thanks, Murph. Just remind everybody, I know a lot of people sent in some questions. You can type something in the Q&A, and we will try to get to them also. So let's turn to Katie. And Katie, so your career, where you've gone, and just, you know, even as a female, it may be a little bit different, you know, breaking into a group that's been really dominated for the females. It's been hard, but dominated by the males. You know, we've tried to make an adjustment here, even in Mass, to recognize that. And now we have 3 referee directors on the girls female side, trying to do more girls clinics. But you've come up and been successful, you know, again, started as a player in college and then transitioned into officiating, still doing grassroots, still doing high school. You've worked the NCAA and been honored enough to work the Olympics. What has mentors and different types of mentors along the way meant to you?
Kevin, thanks for having me. First, everyone attending tonight, thanks so much for joining us. Hope to see you in the rink soon. And Kevin, thank you so much for organizing this and having the mindset to create this mentor program. I think this can be huge. Well, I certainly think a lot of relationships are built organically in the locker room. I think the game has grown significantly. There's thousands of games happening in Massachusetts every day. And sometimes it's hard to find that mentor in the locker room that can help you reach your goals. So putting this program together, I hope will help a lot of people that have goals that are trying to accomplish them and connect them with people who have gone on similar paths. So thanks for organizing this and putting together this program. I think it will help a lot of people going forward. I've had countless mentors over the course of my career, and certainly wouldn't have accomplished what I have without them. I was very fortunate when I first started. Just to give you a little background, I grew up in Westfield, Massachusetts, played hockey with the boys through 9th grade, and then switched over to prep school to play with the girls in 10th. Went on to play at Brown, played 4 years there, and then got out of school and started playing rec women's hockey, where I was having, for the first time in my life, pay my tuition and my gas. So I was driving an hour to play a 36-minute game, and quickly realized that that was the first time gas prices really spiked, and I realized that the money I was spending, you know, wasn't quite worth the 36 minutes of ice time. So I thought, you know, maybe if I could just ref a couple games beforehand, I could break even for the day. And so that's how I got into officiating. I went to the seminar and started officiating Women's Rec League. And I was very fortunate to find a mentor early on in that league who had gone to the Olympics and also eventually worked the NCAA finals on the women's side. And so really, Julie Piacentini kind of helped me pave my way, and she was my mentor in so many of the steps I took, from moving from the Rec Women's League to working some girls youth hockey, to then the following year doing Division III women's, a few years later doing Division I women's. She really helped me every step of the way and introduced me to the USAH hockey development camps, which were the requisites to getting on the IHF path. And at the time, those camps were pretty hard to find. They weren't really highlighted on the website as they are now. And so really it took back then knowing someone to figure out the paths. And so being connected with Julie early on really helped me understand the steps to take. So to get to the IHF, it involves going to USA Hockey's Futures Camp. I think there was another one in there, and then the Elite Camp. So 3 camps on the women's side in order to get certified for the IHF. And certainly being able to follow in her footsteps and have her help me every step of the way was critical. Certainly owe a lot to her for getting to where I got. But so many mentors along the way. My first D3 women's college game, I remember I was a linesman, had lined a few summer games for a high school college prep league, and Julie was out there with me, was teaching me when to put my arm up on a delayed offsides and kind of got that down when I stepped on the ice for my first college game, and the two officials I was with were incredible. They really guided me and helped me throughout that whole game. So owe a lot to them as well. And you know, I think my advice to younger officials is ask a lot of questions. I think officials are eager to help their peers. And so ask questions. You know, like the guys I mentioned earlier, there's so many scenarios, and having that dialogue, whether you're driving to a game or after a game or in the locker room, certainly utilize that time in the locker room when you're there with your partners to ask questions and share scenarios and just pick people's brains. For officials that have been around a long time, they have a lot of stories to share, and it's fun to hear some of those scenarios that you don't see every day on the ice. So the more questions you can ask out there, the more you'll learn, and just try to soak it all in. And find, you know, Ryan mentioned finding a mentor that's at the, you know, the peak of their league. Certainly, you know, try to find all sorts of mentors, and you'll be able to pick a little bit from each referee's style, and be able to kind of create your own. It's certainly an art form out there, and so to be able to pick a little bit from each official that you work with and kind of find their strengths and try to build your own strengths as you move forward, certainly can help you build that package and help you get to that next level. And so, you know, moving from league to league, from D3 to D1 women's side, I met a lot of great officials along the way, and I was fortunate that I was paired with some veterans when I first got going. I jumped in when I first started the D3, it was 2-in-1 system, and then the D1 was the 4-man. So certainly jumping into the 4-man, switching from a linesman to a referee, having that other person on the ice with you with the bands makes that transition a lot easier than the 1 and 2 when you're forced to skate end to end on your own and really run the game. But you know, I had the experience and the opportunities at various camps, a lot of summer leagues to really have the opportunities to work various systems, which helped along the way. But being paired in the 4-man with veterans certainly helped my development, and being able to really pick people's brains on various, you know, positioning, judgment, communication with coaches is certainly a big thing that you can learn a lot from your peers when you're in a game, and you know your partner is talking to the coach. Ask your partner after the game how the conversation went, so you have an idea of how to handle certain scenarios when, you know, different situations. That's certainly helpful. So yeah, I think you know, my biggest advice out there for everyone is to ask a lot of questions. And you know, the more questions you ask out there, the more your partners and peers in the locker room will understand that you're trying to learn and soak it all in, and the more they're going to want to help you. And you know, find many mentors. Find someone that has gone on to a path that you aspire to get to. There's a lot of area, you know, different paths out there. Everyone on this call has taken a different, unique path, and so just really picking people's brains about the various leagues that are out there, and how you can move forward and reach the goals that you're trying to accomplish.
Great. Thank you very much, Katie. You know, this all ties into what we're, you know, asking everyone out there, you know, to think about really trying to give back and be a mentor. And as this year, and with seminars and new officials, especially coming up, that they're going to need someone to rely on this year, because it could be a struggle with us with some training. So, you know, if we all can be in this as sort of a fraternity, as a group together, and, you know, lean on each other and go that extra mile. And, you know, while you're in there, maybe you can, as you've heard, you know, yeah, we can probably pair some people up and be mentors, mentees, but a lot of that just happens naturally. You bond sometimes with people, other officials in the locker room. So don't be afraid to have conversations with the other officials, be it your new officials asking questions, or a seasoned official asking questions or talking, giving advice back, and you may get that, that natural bond at that point. Let me change it up a little bit, and we're gonna go to Chris and talk about his experience. He came up through Mass, from Southie and everything else. And, going back in Mass, we really did have a mentor, and we used to stick around and develop. Times have changed with regards to the amount of games and the amount of hockey, and it was a much smaller group back then. And we sort of, even though the game has changed with the amount of games and the amount of officials, we also have to start thinking about us as an official group. And as that group, how do we work better and sort of think about the ways we used to do it as the old school ways and sort of get back to that a little bit. Chris, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks everybody for joining us. I think it's awesome that I think it's 109 people have joined us. It's almost June and there hasn't been any hockey for a while, and that you're willing to come on to something like this, I think is awesome. So yeah, as Kevin said, I'm a product of Massachusetts, born and raised in South Boston, still live in just outside of Boston. And I'm sure all 109 of you on the call have heard of Gene Binda. I'm a product of Gino's. And I remember I started refereeing when I was 11 years old, and I would bug him and bug him and bug him to let me referee for him, and finally he let me. And, I had no choice to have, mentors my first 6 or 7 years of officiating, because I wasn't old enough to drive to games. So the majority of the games I would work with Gino, and he'd pick me up and would go, or he'd pair me up with somebody and they'd pick me up and go. So that was huge for me, thinking back on it now. I mean, back then, all I thought about was that I was just getting a ride to the game. Now thinking back, it's, it was almost like the rides were more important than the games, because there were times when you would sit and talk about hockey and whatnot. And so then as time goes on, and, I knew that I really wanted to do this as a career, I got into the Odp program that Scott runs now, and I lived in Des Moines, Iowa for 2 years working that league. And so, as Gino and those guys in this area, mentored me for that 6 or 7 years, it was time for me to now branch out and get, like someone had also mentioned, you need to listen to a different array of people. So I sort of needed to branch out and get that different perspective. So that's when I decided to move out there. So I won't go through, my whole gambit, but I think I'll follow up on a few things of what a couple people have mentioned. I don't think that mentor versus mentee, I don't think it has anything to do with age. I don't think it has anything to do with skill. I don't think it has anything to do with the success that you've had in the business. I have mentors or people that I talk to on a regular basis who I've been in the NHL longer than, have probably maybe had more success, that are younger than me. And so it's just, all it is talking the game and seeing what works. One of those is Wes McCauley. I mean, I talk to Wes McCauley probably on a daily basis. In fact, it was funny listening to some of the other guys. Just today, Wes calls me and we talked about a play that he had in a playoff game like 5 years ago. So that type of stuff, it's wanting to get better. That's what it is. It's wanting to get better. And so don't always think that you need to find someone who's, much older than you are, or has done a lot more. Be willing to listen to anybody, and not only listen, but watch. Don't worry about what anybody else's success level is. Sometimes you can learn from someone who you think you might be better than, because you watch them do something on the ice that didn't work, and now you know not to do it, right? So now you've automatically become better. So don't look at I think the number one thing that I would urge everybody, don't look at the mentor-mentee thing as someone that's older or been around longer or anything, or success level. That's not what it's all about. It's being able to watch and listen to anybody in the business. And then the best piece of advice I ever was from a guy from my area. His name was Marty McDonough. And he always told me, he goes, but like, you know, when you have one of those cooking devices where you pour the pasta in and the water goes out, he goes, take one of those and like sift through all the advice that you've been given and use it sometimes, and then see what works. That's exactly what you need to do. That was the best piece of advice I could ever get, is listen to everybody, use it, don't use it, and see what works for you. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like for you guys, because we even deal with that at the NHL level. Sometimes guys are being pulled in different directions to do one thing one way, then they go to another game and somebody tells them to do the other way. And whenever a guy that comes in our league asks me about something like that, you know, Runes, I was at this game last night and so-and-so told me to do this. And then I was there 2 nights earlier, this guy told me to do the complete opposite. I always say, listen to them, try it. If it worked for you, keep doing it. If it didn't work for you, don't do it. And that's the best. I think that's what I would leave you guys with, as far as the whole mentor-mentee relationship in coming up through the ranks.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that. And you know, I had a list of questions here, and it's amazing is that as you guys are all talking, you're really hitting all those questions that all came in advance too. I want to go back to Scotty, and you know, Scotty, you talked about the ODP and everything else, but you know, you've been around and your career and everything else. So a little bit of your own experience and what it's meant to you.
Well, I think, you know, I'm amazed, right? I listened to everybody else talk here, and I learned a whole bunch of things today. So I think you never stop learning, and there was some great stuff on here. And for me personally, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have a little bit of success on the ice myself. And when I look back, I was able to work with Brian in the National Hockey League for a while. I worked collegiately, worked some Frozen Fours, worked some World Championships, and things like that. And so I have a little bit of experience on the ice at maybe a different point in my life. But when you look back, or when I look back and I reflect, at every point in time, there were a handful of people that I would consider mentors. When I was fortunate enough as a 21-year-old to work a Frozen Four, there were people that I worked with at that time that I would consider mentors to help me. And as Chris talked about, moving from Gino, going out to the Midwest and getting different groups of people, at every level there were people that were able to help me along the way that were mentors. And honestly, there's people that don't know the difference between a hockey puck and a baseball, that are mentors to me in life, and were mentors to me on the ice, that talked to me about being, somebody that was pretty successful at a young age, learning things about humility, learning things about listening. And one of the best bits of advice I ever got from one of what I might consider as a life mentor is, you always have to expect somebody's going to be watching. That when you're in a situation where you're officiating or working in a restaurant or doing whatever, other people are watching what you're doing, and they're learning from what your actions are. And always be cognizant of that. And I always think that's a really good bit of advice. So I hope that helps in terms of giving you a little bit of my background on the ice. But I think what you're doing in Massachusetts in terms of trying to develop a more structured and a really solid mentorship program. When we look at the game and we look at retention of officials and we look at what's going to be best for the game and best for officiating, this is key. And I'd encourage, we're 100 some odd officials on here, and I look through the list and there's some names I recognize. There's some names of some people on here that I know have a lot of experience, and I really encourage those people really, get involved in that regard. And some of the younger people, really try and put yourselves in positions to learn from officials, because it's going to keep you around longer. It's going to rejuvenate you. And I can tell you, as the quote unquote mentor, when I've played that role and you see people that have success, there's no better feeling in the world. You know, running the development program now and seeing officials go on and have success, that's more gratifying to me, and seeing their success, than anything I ever accomplished on the ice. And I mean that sincerely.
That sounds great. Thanks, Scott. Ryan, I know you gave a little bit of your history and everything else, and just come back to you before we go into some questions and things. If you have anything else that you wanted to give with some of your experience locally and things.
I mean, locally, I started with Ken Tucker, and then I, found Gino. Gino found me like he does for everybody else. But I do remember one day we were on the phone, and he watched me skate a couple of games, and I remember it like it was yesterday. He's like, "Kid, we're gonna get you to the NHL one day." And then from that point on, it was just, I was determined, to get there. But I think Runes did a great job, and I touched briefly about how it worked for me and finding someone that was successful at whatever league I was working at. Success really doesn't have anything to do with it. It all depends on the individual, really. So latch on and try to find a good person, one that you can talk to, who's not going to be. And if you're the parent, if you're the mentor, don't act like the parent or the coach. Just be there, be a good friend, and be a listening ear.
Yeah, that's almost goes to the question that just came in is, we know all officials, can someone speak to the importance of choosing the right people to learn from, and how can we learn what not to do from other officials? And I think you just hit on it a little bit, and Chris was talking about it. Some things you have to try and learn, right? There's certain things that a mentor is going to talk about, and there's positioning and things. I think that's important, but then how you then roll into those things and adjust, you're going to have to live and learn and practice and everything else. And it's all about really, I'd say, getting advice from your mentors and trying to put that into play and see if that's the right thing for you. And if not, it's going back and asking some other questions with that. Would you agree to that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think you hit it. That's, it's spot on. I wouldn't add much more to that.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to throw a few questions. Sort of they've been asked a little bit, answered a lot, most of these and everything else. I'm looking to be mentored. What do I need to do? So I'll answer that, and I'll let you guys chime in if you want to too. So within Massachusetts on massofficials.com, we're updating our mentor page. So both two things. If you'd like to be a mentor, please go in and we'll let you sign up, and we'll put your names out there so you can try to be a mentor to people. If you want to be a mentee and you're looking to be paired up, we'll try to do that also. But also remember, is everyone sort of talked about this, it sort of happens naturally sometimes too, and that's sometimes the best way for it to happen. But we are more than willing to actually pair people up if we need to in Mass, and try to do it geographically, people on the North Shore, South Shore. And it's not just for entry level, it's for, a tenured official that wants to move up to juniors, to college and things like that. We want to make you successful. Any other advice from anybody else on the panel like to add?
Kevin, I'll add to that. I think the whole, I get, we're talking about mentor mentee, and that's great. And, but you have to put it in the effort also. Don't always think that you need a sidekick or somebody, an actual person that's going to make you better. Like I remember when I was coming up, I would go to a BU hockey game or a BC hockey game and watch the guy and watch the officials and get better that way. So they were mentoring me, and they didn't even know it because I was watching it. So if like somebody had mentioned earlier on, if you're committed and you really want to get better, there are going to be people who are going to be willing to help, but you're going to have to help yourself also. And that's and the best way to do that is watching games and watching what certain officials do and learn that way. Don't always think that it has to be verbal. It can be also visual.
And Kevin, I think you have to be committed to it. And I think anybody that's on this call tonight is probably committed to it if you're spending the time to watch this. But it really is. You have to be committed and want to do it. I mean, I think a lot of people have watched this documentary on Michael Jordan. And, you know, the one thing, you know, forget all the stuff, it's all made for TV and all that. But the one thing that really came out to me was, you know, how competitive he is. And that is also, if you look at officials who become really successful, they're competitive too. They want to get better, and they're doing everything they can. You have to want to get better. If you're not committed to it, you're really not going to get better. It's not just going to naturally happen for you. You've got to want it really bad. And that's, you know, if you want to become successful, you've got to do all the little extra little things. I mean, Ryan kind of touched on that, but you know, he was willing to do all the extra little things to get there. And if it's no different than going and playing college hockey or anything else you want to do in life, you really got to be committed to it, and you got to be competitive, and you got to want to do it better than anybody else.
Excellent. I'm just thumbing through the questions here, some that have come in also, plus the ones I sent. I'm just looking at the ones we've sent, and I think we've answered all of them. We talked about, did the ODP play a role in your development? So we have both Ryan and Chris that actually went through the ODP program, been very successful. Scotty talked about that. And if you're here in Mass and you're interested in the ODP, please reach out to myself and Scotty. We'll talk to you and see if people are ready for that. We do have, right now, we've got Connor Harrington from Massachusetts that's a full-time in the program. We would love to send more people through that program. I think it's a great experience for people. So if you're interested in that, that's definitely one way to go. Let's go off topic a little bit, and this is just for career stuff and everything. Some stuff have come in. We'll throw this out to all of you. What is your favorite moment in your career and at any level of your career? What was your favorite moment?
I'll go first. The rest didn't show up one morning for my daughter's house league game, and I got to do it.
There you go. Anybody else want to chime in?
I think for me was probably the 2 years that I worked in the USHL, because as I said, I'm born and raised in South Boston, and I went to Northeastern for school. So I didn't board. So I lived at home while I was going there. So up until that point, I had never been away from home. So I think moving away those 2 years were probably the funnest. That was the question, funnest?
Yeah, your favorite moment in your career. Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
I would say for myself, I got two of them. My first game in the NHL was with Brian Murphy, so I'll never forget that day. And then my first playoff game was actually with Chris Rooney, so I'll never forget that day either. So it's pretty cool, pretty special, and you know, two moments I'll never forget.
Great. Let's see here. Favorite city or arena to work in, and why? You're up there. Go ahead.
Boston, because I can be in my bed at about 10:15.
Honestly, I tell you my favorite place that I ever worked, there'd be two. One of them would be the old Hershey Park Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania, because it's just kind of a cool place, and it's where Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in an NBA game. But the other one was an arena in Turku, Finland, working in the World Championships. And I think anytime the European atmosphere, and Katie can speak to this a little bit and whatnot, but working in a European environment when the home country, Finland, was playing against their rivals at that point, it was the Soviet Union. It was an environment like I've never been a part of. So that was pretty cool. And from Finland to Chicago was not as quick as getting from Boston to Rooney's house.
Come on, Katie, you're next.
I definitely have to say being on that Olympic ice was an all-time high. It was a long-term dream. I wanted to get there as a player, but was fortunate to have the chance to get on the ice as an official.
For me, Madison Square Garden. You walk downtown New York, walk in that building, there's nothing like it.
Well, I'll have to echo that. Just listen, I've been in Massachusetts for 21 years, but I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I'm an Islander fan, but I can root for the Bruins, and there is no other city like New York, though. It's a great city. Let me go here to a couple questions that I can answer also. Does USA Hockey Official Exchange Program help schedule national tournaments? So, yes. So the way to actually work a national tournament, USA national tournament, is you need to be a level 4 official. So continue to move up through the ranks. And then you would submit to your local RIC that you'll be interested in working a national tournament. And we submit names every single year. If there's a national tournament in your state or district, more officials will work because we need more officials from that local area. But we are limited on the number of officials that we do send away, and we do send away officials every year. There was no national tournament this year, so it was all canceled with COVID. I'll put this plug in. The year before, we sent 14 officials from Massachusetts to work the nationals, and 11 of the 14 worked the final game. So it was a great year for us 2 years ago. Another question that's in here, and the questions that came in, Scotty, I'll let you answer this. Is there an age cap for the ODP program? You're on mute.
I was actually just typing a response. We don't really have an age cap. Every situation is a little bit different. So we're always looking, and I don't know the age of the person that was asking the question, but depending on your individual situation and what you bring to the table, we always have an interest in having people involved. And this actually slides back into the main topic today about mentorship and things like that. And the kind of the meat of our program are officials that are somewhere between 19 and 25. So it's always good for us to have somebody that might be a little bit older or have a little more life experience, to have them involved to provide some of that guidance and a little more quote unquote senior leadership on the ice. Even officials that might be local, living in a place near, say, Attleboro, where they would work the North American League team down there and whatnot. And certainly I would encourage anybody that has an interest or wants that question answered further, they can always, through you, Kevin, or get a hold of me and we can discuss those things offline.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Another question in here, does Mass Hockey have a formal shadow program with documentation? So yes, we do have some shadow programs, and we're actually in the midst of trying to formalize it and have it consistent throughout the whole state. I can tell you that in Massachusetts right now, it's up to the leagues, and we are pushing more leagues to do a shadow program. And what that shadow program is an official out there in a warm-up suit that will be on the ice, moving with the official, trying to direct them about positioning and coaching them on the ice during the game. And if it's going well, they jump off the ice and into the penalty box, and they'll work with both of the officials out there. So the South Shore Conference does have one. They do a lot of the games, the squirt games that are held at the Canton Sportsplex. And I'm happy to say that the Greater Springfield Valley League, so the Greater Springfield League, started a program this year. So if you're interested in one, if you're an assigner out there, we're more than willing to step up and help you with your program. If you're interested in having one, I think it's a great way to also help teach the officials on the ice at those lower level games. Remember, this is what I talk at the coaching clinics, and I say to the coaches, besides games, what else do you do? And they all scratch their heads. I'm like, besides games, do you do anything else? And they're like, we practice. I'm like, so as officials, I hate to say it, but our practice happens to be your squirt games at the lower levels. So you need to understand that. And some eyes open up. So we're doing more communicating between the officials and the coaching, so we can understand that and then have better relationships. Mass Hockey has definitely taken up a role this year to help with the abuse of officials. It's a national thing. It's just not Massachusetts. It's not just in ice hockey. It's everywhere. And Scotty's in the national office and everything else too. We're working on that, and there's a task force working on that nationally. So USAH Hockey is quite aware of that, and changes are going to be made. And I'll tell you that things are going to be made locally whenever the up and coming season does take place. So,
Hey, Kevin, can I jump in real quick with something?
Absolutely.
Once again, I don't know the demographics of everybody that's on this, but there are a lot of people on there. I'm the father of a 14-year-old level 1 official. And, just like any kid, he probably doesn't want to hear a whole lot of what his father has to tell him. When he's out working games and whatnot, there's a lot of times he's working with other young officials. And that's great. And I'm glad they're on the ice. And I'm also not ignorant to the challenges that assigners have with the amount of hockey that's going on. But to some of you officials that are on this that are maybe a little bit older and a little more experienced, you know what? If you want to work some extra games and you've got the odd whatever Wednesday night, reach out to the schedulers and say, hey, I'd like to work. I don't necessarily need to work another high school game or whatever, another prep school game. I want to go work 2 squirt games, or I want to go work a mite, a squirt, and a peewee game. And please put me with one of your young level 1 or level 2s. I know there was a question typed in here about retention and why do we lose so many young officials at a young age? Abuse is an issue. There's no question. And from a national office, we are going to be addressing that. But part of it is sometimes is a young official is looking for a little bit of guidance. And so I would challenge some of those officials on here, find one night a month and try and put yourself in a position to where you're going to go help a younger official out. I think it's going to benefit all of us.
And that's a great way to end. And let's end there. I wanted to keep this to an hour, just a little over an hour. For those questions that came in, I will get a printout of these questions, and we'll definitely respond to you and look forward to more interaction and everything else with everybody. This was a great webinar. I greatly appreciate the time. And I'll throw this one last one came in, Murph. If the NHL does come back and play, they said it was your retirement year. Will you work any games if they come back and play in the next couple months at all?
I don't know yet. To be honest with you, it depends on the format and the timing and all that. So I have a lot of people asking me that, and I really don't know the exact answer, how that's all going to play itself out.
My game's Murph.
No, so I really don't know, and I've been asked that multiple times, and it's not like I'm putting it off. It depends on the league and the format they come back in and what they want to do. And if I do get the opportunity, it's great. But if I don't, it's no big deal. I had a great run, and it was a lot of fun, and there'll be no tears shed on that for sure. And Kevin, one last question: is there a place where this whole thing's going to be posted?
Yes.
People are asking. I get an email. People are asking me that.
Yep. So this is recorded. We will download it. We'll put it on our Mass Officials page, and Mass Hockey will also post it on their YouTube page also. So we post it. Just give me a couple days to get it downloaded and up and everything else, and we'll send that out. So
thank you.
I appreciate all the attendees, your time. As people said, we're here in May after a funny year end. So I appreciate your time tonight, and continue to think about the development of yourself and other officials. To Katie, thank you so much. Brian, thanks. Ryan, I greatly appreciate it. Chris, it was a great pleasure to have you. And Scotty from the ODP and everything else, your experience, greatly appreciate your time, the time of all of you to give back, and what you continue to do for all of hockey, just not USA Hockey, the NCAA, the IHF, all the way to the NHL. Greatly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a great night, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.